Awesome. All right, so welcome here to this Building Healthy Families workshop where we're going to be discussing how we're going to change healthcare, hopefully, and lives here in America. Because uh, as a show of hands, raise your hand if you think things are, well, is health getting better or worse here in America? Would you say people are healthier or sicker? And have we noticed that there's an increase in the amount of neurodevelopmental disorders, things like autism, ADD, ADHD, and the autism spectrum? Would you say that's going up or is it going down? So to make sure we're on point is two things. Number one, my mission and Max Living's mission is to empower people to live longer and healthier lives through chiropractic and the integration of the five essentials. And we'll explain the five essentials of health and how this is really a replacement healthcare system. And when we think about these things, one of the things I want to start out with is looking at the fact that when we think about healthcare here in America, it's not really healthcare. We have a sick care system. And we have a system that has allowed ourselves to have 33% of the population, 133 million people, to have a chronic illness. That's men, women, and children included in that 133 million. There's only 73 million kids between age 0 or age 1 day and age 17. And so, of this population of the 378 million people here in America, 133 million of them have a chronic disease that is never expected to get better. It is expected to get worse as they age. And it is our healthcare system's tactics to manage the condition and to minimize its effects on the person's quality of life while they age, understanding that pharmaceuticals, drugs, or surgeries or physical therapy are their only options to try to mitigate or minimize the impact on their life. When looking at the statistics, obesity has tripled in adolescents. It's doubled in children under the age of 0 to 5. And when we look at these things, it's predicted. I was looking at the research and it blew my mind. I was just like shocked at the number. They did this research and they were looking back in 2015 and they estimated and said that by 2025, it would be half of the population. Blue Cross Blue Shield is the person who's doing these studies. Exactly. It's already, I mean, it's almost 2025, y'all. They're going to redo the studies to look to see if it's gone from 33% of the population up to 50% of the population with a chronic disease. That's 168 million people with chronic disease never expected to get better. So we have a different approach. And one of the things that I want to talk about, David, if you would, I'll let you stand up here and just tell them a little bit about what brought you here and what you've been reversing and how that's going for you, because I loved our conversation earlier.
My name is David Dayton, and I came here pretty much for the purpose to try to get off all these diabetes medications and to get myself in a position where I could then exercise again and take care of things. And you know, I was a little bit skeptical at first, but let me tell you now, I'm to the point where my insulin that I originally was taking is cut down in half. And I've already shed one pill, and I'm looking at getting rid of a few others now. And I'm hoping that by October, I'll be able to get rid of insulin. So yeah, this does work. This is it's just you got to think about diet, about exercise, but you have to be well enough to be able to exercise. If you're having pain and you can't exercise, you're not going to stay with it. So the most important thing is, yeah, you just gotta get yourself to that place where you can really exercise.
And I remember a family member brought you to one of these workshops, and that's where you decided to become a patient. And it's really great. And I think that the biggest thing that has been an impression on me is that you said, by October, I'm going to be off all these diabetes medications. I'll be non-diabetic and reversing it. You've lost like, what, 30 or 40 pounds by now? Okay. And then the thing is that from the initiation of when he met at a workshop, it's the recognition that we look at things that your body was created to heal. And it is trying to do so. And for every problem, there is a cause. And if we remove the cause, then there is a cure. The body will heal itself if we get rid of what's interfering with its healing. And so it's been awesome because one of the biggest things that is the compliment is to say that he was saying that his life had gotten so miserable that he probably wasn't going to make it to retirement. And he's a great teacher. And we need more great teachers. And so my job, I look at it with all of my patients, is an opportunity to keep them in their gifting so that you can give back to the world. This is just my gifting. This is what I get to do to serve. And so I really appreciate you being willing to speak. Thank you so much. Thank you. So the idea is that we need a new healthcare system. The flaws have allowed us. Do you realize that chronic disease accounts for 81% of all hospital admissions? 91% of all of the prescriptions that are written and filled in the United States by a population of 378 million people, which is 5% of the world's population. We consume at least half of the world's drugs every year. 5% of the world's population is so sick, they consume half the world's drugs, and 91% are for chronic conditions never expected to get better. 76% of all physician visits are for chronic disease. And they would like us to believe that it is a strain on the healthcare system. And if you're talking about the people who are laboring, giving, loving, and serving every day, the nurses, the doctors, the hospital staff, you're right. It's a strain on the healthcare system. But if we look at this from the top down and the way our system is being run by insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and by the people who are profiting off of the disease, the sickest country on the planet, industrialized country, then let me ask you a question. If your business is healthcare, and it's actually, I looked it up today, it was $4.5 trillion is spent on healthcare in the United States every year. $4.5 trillion. That it's up to about 23% of the gross domestic product. All the money made, around 23% of all of the money made in the United States is spent on healthcare. So if you're only getting 20% of the money available in America, as a business, do you want less money or do you want more money? Come on, this is participation activity. You want more money. You're a business. So as a pharmaceutical industry, do you want to make less money or more money? As a healthcare industry, you're trying to get more of that $4.5 trillion coming your way. And you would like it to go from, 23% to 25% to 30% of all of the money that's being spent. As a business, you're like, wow, everybody's spending money on us. We're going to be more profitable. That is the wrong results. And that is not the results we, the people, think we're getting and that we want. We want to be less sick. But to make us less sick would be not as profitable. And so when we look at these things, the CDC reports that 14% of all the calories consumed by teenagers are from fast food. 40% of the daily calories in most children come from sugar-added drinks. And when we look at all of these things, we have to start to wonder, how are we going to change this? So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to address things based, if I can get my cursor to work for me. As we look at this, we're going to look at things from a couple of different topics. Because if we're going to understand that asthma affects 6 million kids a year, obesity, 14 million, 15 million, another 15 million of the 73 million kids are overweight. So that's roughly 30 million kids. ADHD, 6 million. We have anxiety at 4 million, malnutrition at 13 million. So when you do that, add all that up, you're right around that 60 million of the 73 million kids in America have some sort of chronic problem. So are they going to be the next generation? Is it going to be healthier or sicker? According to Blue Cross Blue Shield, who did the millennials study, they saw no less than a 200% increase in chronic disease. The top nine things that they pay out money for, they saw no less than a 200% increase in the millennials. So what's that going to do to the next generation that's raising in a worse environment? So let's talk about autism, because if we look at autism, this is just an example of something that is a freight train screaming out of control. Number one, raise your hand if you know someone or you have someone in your family who is on the autism spectrum of ADD, ADHD, right? Okay. So when we look at these things, we see that this is a problem. On autism spectrum, now raise your hand. Now, how about this? Let's ask it this way. Has anyone ever been told by their counselor, their doctor, their school teacher, anybody, what causes autism? No one's ever been told? Well, the fact is, we're going to talk about it tonight. And all of us have opinions, right? Some of us will say it's the plastics and all of the chemicals that the kids are coming in contact with. Some people will say it's nutrition. Some people will say it's vaccines. Some people will say, right? And what we're going to discuss tonight is that your theories, what's that? It's all of it. It is. It is the combination thereof. Because when we look at things, we have to understand that all disease, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. And the first thing we have to understand is, number one, it's not genetic. They're not destined to have it. And what happens is they are damaged into autism. They are damaged into the neurodevelopmental disorder. And I'll go to the Mayo Clinic so that we're not talking about what I'm saying. This isn't my opinion. This is the Mayo Clinic and the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Autism spectrum disorder has no single cause. Given the complexity of the disorder and the fact that the symptoms and the severity vary so widely, there are probable many causes. Both genetics and environment play a role. The next thing, what decreases the risk in autism is nutrition. According to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, studies have shown that taking a prenatal vitamin helps lower the risk of autism, and the research suggests that taking vitamins and supplements might provide protective effects for those exposed to certain environmental contaminants during pregnancy. What are some of those environmental contaminants during pregnancy? Anti-epileptic drugs, antidepressant drugs. Having a preterm birth is a risk factor. Developing gestational diabetes is also a risk factor. So by openly admitting these things, this says that we know that nutrition plays a role and supplements provide a protective effect. So we go back to the old stuff that we knew. We started prenatal vitamins to stop birth defects, right? In the nervous system. And so we know that like folate and folic and different B vitamins are essential for the brain and the spinal cord to develop. So what happens is an embryo is a ball. Two cells go to one cell. That one cell divides many, many times, creates a ball of cells. The first organ to develop inside of an embryo is the brain and the spinal cord. Then it directs of the first organ system, which is the heart and all of the blood vessels. And so then the nervous system tells the blood vessels where to grow, and they piggyback along the development of all of the arteries so that we can take one of the essential nutrients that every human being has to have, which is oxygen. And it can carry oxygen from the placenta to the rest of the developing cells because the ball has gotten too thick for them to pass oxygen one cell to the next. And so if deficiencies in certain nutrients can cause brain and nervous system development, and what are the other things that we're not developing properly? The spinal column, spina bifida, and called Aquinas syndromes, and all these different things develop if the spinal cord or if the embryo doesn't get certain nutrients from the mother. So when we look at these things, how to prevent autism? Of course, it says no smoking, not drinking, no drugs. Eat well. Vaccinations, which we'll be discussing, is a kind of an interesting statement. Getting existing conditions treated. Stay away from airborne chemicals. Staying away from others who smoke. Use caution when cleaning, again, because of contaminants. And maintain a relaxed environment. So let's get back to the cure. All disease can be broken down into toxicities, deficiencies, or a loss of control. If the body is deprived something it needs, then it can't develop or maintain itself. If the body is toxic in something that it doesn't need, it will cause the body a strain that will result in certain effects. And if a system, like cancer is a great example, when a body part starts to grow out of control, cells grow out of control of the nervous system and the body, and they start to interact to save themselves instead of the person that they're living in. They become a different entity. And we're going to talk about, if we look at this from a very simple thing, we have to understand that 90, and this is the CDC's statements, not mine, 90 to 95% of all chronic disease is diet and lifestyle related. But our healthcare system, and that includes cancer, y'all, cancer, diet and lifestyle related, number one killer. So if this is the case, we have 90 to 95% of the cure. As a society, we are in control of our own health and our own destiny. And we have to know what's causing the contamination or the toxins. And then we have to know how to minimize the deficiencies that we're existing in and how to keep our bodies under better control or homeostasis, right? That's our science word for harmony in the human body. And so when we look at these things, whoa, that's not what I wanted. There it is. You go way up there. No. Sorry. Two technicians. So exposure to environmental toxins, again, this is from the Mayo Clinic, exposure to environmental toxins such as pesticides, herbicides during pregnancy, the anti-epileptic drugs, the antidepressant drugs, maternal infections, consumption of alcohol and other harmful chemicals increases the risk of babies born with autism. So in the discussions that you've heard, has anyone ever talked about prescription medications being possibly one of the causes of autism? And that's a bummer, because we have to understand that drugs have side effects. They're not actually side effects, they're just effects. We label them side effects because those are the effects we don't want. You want to get rid of your headache, but it causes you to have a stomach ulcer. Well, the stomach ulcer is the side effect and the lack of a headache is the effect. And we just label them different so we can talk about them and nice and feel good about ourselves. So the idea here is I want to go back to this.
I wonder if you have a headache, etc.
Yeah, exactly. It usually is. I didn't produce enough of my ibuprofen either or anything like that. So when we look at things, we have to understand that the eating well, the treating existing conditions, minimizing our chemical exposure, using caution when cleaning, and maintaining a relaxed environment are the best things that we can do. So what do we have to do? We have to replace the system. We need real health care. And that's what this office and every other Max Living, we've got about 200 offices around the country. This is what we are trying to do, one community at a time, with the 5 essentials, because they said you got to eat better and you need less contamination. So nutrition is one of the essentials. We talk about the fact that we need a relaxed environment, but how about a little hope? How about a little bit of direction in life and having a mindset that instead of it saying, hey, I've got this disease, I've got this problem, I think I'm deficient in Excedrin. I better take an Excedrin. Instead, maybe we do something that's positive for the human body. And our natural instinct, our mindset says, for every problem, there is a cause. And if I remove the cause, my problem will go away. The most common, I love the headache thing, the most common cause of headache is dehydration. The second most common cause of headaches is misalignments of the vertebra and the cervical spine, putting pressure on the nerves that are controlling blood flow to the head. So how about when you get a headache, I should chug some water and I need to go do my neck traction. I need to relax, maybe lay on my neck roll or relax my neck. And if that doesn't work, well, then I'll schedule an appointment to get adjusted. I've just gotten rid of the two most common causes of headaches. What about the fact that oxygen and exercise, this isn't for a bikini body. It's not, you're not here because it's summertime and I told you we were going to lose 40 pounds so you could go on vacation. You're here because you understand that something's wrong out there and you want different results for you. The minimizing of toxins is another essential to health. And putting all of this together with chiropractic. Why chiropractic? Well, because in 1895, it was defined as the philosophy, art, and science of things natural. Then there was a code, a system of adjusting the segments of the spine to remove the cause of dis-ease, a lack of harmony in the body. And if you leave a lack of harmony in the body long enough, you can remove the hyphen and just slide it together. It's disease. And we can label it. And it has certain aspects that we can then treat the aspects. But until we remove the cause, the disease continues to get worse. All we're doing is managing these things. Instead, let's focus on removing the cause to the problem. And in doing so, I would like to help you do that right now by having you put your stuff down in your seats and stand up. We're going to deal with one of the causes. So tonight, we're going to talk to you about exercise to the 90 percentile. We want you to go to your 90%, whatever that is, and we're going to do something called fast feet. And we're going to be pretending that there's a fire underneath our feet, and you want to put the fire out without getting caught on fire. We're going to do this for 20 seconds. In 3, 2, 1, go. Move your feet. Move your feet as fast as you can. Now, of course, if you have certain knee problems or something like that, don't end up falling in the floor. But you want to at least try to move because you know what? Some of you are going so slow, you are on fire. Come on, people. Move. We want to get completely out of breath. And if I can do this for 20 seconds and still talk and breathe. Folks, one of the essential nutrients is oxygen. If your body's deficient in it, nothing works right. In 6 minutes, if your brain doesn't have enough oxygen, you die. Exercise is for delivery of nutrients. I'll let you have a seat. What about all those endorphins and enkephalins and laughing at ourselves, right? That helps too. All right. Public enemy number one, besides our healthcare system, is sugar. I have an immune system workshop coming up in which we're going to be talking about how cancer and why cancer is the number one killer and how to absolutely reverse cancer or to never get it is the better concept. But I'll touch on sugar this way. Added sugar increases the risk of various chronic diseases, obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But as far as cancer is concerned, sugar is the very fuel that cancer cells feed off of. Because of some of the genetic damage that happens to a cancer cell, they can't produce energy the way a normal cell does, so they ferment sugar for ATP, which is the energy currency of every cell in the body. And so when you have too much blood sugar in your diet, you're giving cancer the chance to grow while you're suppressing your immune system. White blood cell activity, when you reach a certain threshold for every human, which we know what it is for the average adult, it will suppress the immune system by 50% for 5 to 6 hours. So when we look at this, This anti-nutrient is just like we see in our stores now when you go in to pay for your gas. If you go in and you're going to grab something while you're in there and you look at the label now on the cigarettes behind the counter, do you see that they're labeling saying, yes, they are definitely engineering the tobacco to be more addictive? There's a sign now, a warning sign. And then we have to recognize they're having to label that now because of the known connection between smoking and cigarettes. Well, they're doing the same thing with our food. They're bioengineering the additives, the colorings, and the amount of sugar in there to create addictions. So when they look at these things, we have to do this battle. This battle between what do they want versus what do they need. And when it relates to autism and ADD and ADHD in the spectrum, it gets even harder. Let's just be honest. But we do have to be honest with ourselves also, the same way that my parents used to be honest with us, which was, you know what? If you're hungry enough, you'll eat what I cooked. And sometimes that can be days. It's true. I used to really hate onions. And I'm dead serious. Like, I fought that battle. And I lost. And so will everyone else. The ability to win the fight is me doing one of the things that I must do at these workshops. And that is to let you know that one of the reasons I put them on is because I'm compassionate. I'm compassionately pissed off that this is the society that my 4 children are going to grow up in. And it's not going to be my kids, but who are they going to choose to marry? What are their choices going to be? I have 3 boys and 1 girl. I'm 50 years old. My youngest is 4, my oldest is 16. If this is all getting worse, and I sit behind my 2 doors, which is nice and comfortable, and I was to treat back pain and not do these workshops, my community gets sicker. But my job isn't to just work here. You are the community. You are the families. You have the people in church. You have the people at work. My job is to help you understand and help you get compassionate so that you can leave here and save your own families. Because every great thing in this company, every great thing that's happened in this country is always grassroots. Women's rights, equal rights. Every single thing that we have is people saying, no, we won't stand for that anymore. We can change our healthcare system through the law of supply and demand. If we demand a different healthcare system, then they will have to supply it. Otherwise, they can go out of business, which we're going to talk about a very distinct year in 1984 where that almost happened. To fix this, we have to remove processed food. And I have some of the research down in here that you can read my notes where this comes from. Eating processed food, ultra-processed food, now kills more people prematurely than cigarette smoking. Ultra-processed food, because of the damage it causes with cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and obesity, registers more deaths than smoking now. And folks, I'd like to let you know that baby formula is on the list of ultra-processed foods. And that's tragic. And I know that there are some reasons and the medical conditions and things happen, but the society at large is using formula as convenience. And they probably don't know that statistic. That's not what's told to them. And to fix and the reason this goes so deep with me, one of the reasons is because we just need more food by God and less food by man. And the original first food is breast milk, colostrum, and then breast milk. It's originally formulated. We were created to be healthy, and the mother is in contact with the outside world. coming in contact with the viruses and the bacteria and all of the things, and her body is fighting it, and her immune system, which is developed, is generating the antibodies, which are being passed on, readied and built up in the colostrum, ready to be passed on to the baby, so that the baby can have its first coating of its digestive tract with antibodies and all of the things it needs. And then it's made of the food that the mother consumed. It's the original food. And if we think about it like that, and we talk about it like that, and we empower parents with that knowledge, more people will choose it. And again, we have to get back to the fact that, yeah, a lot of our food, this ultra processed food, it's masquerading as health food. I love this label right here. The filling made with 100% whole grains, real peanut butter. What peanut butter is made with grain? I'm sorry, but yeah, it's right there. But somebody grabs it and it's 50 cents cheaper, and they just see peanut butter and they put it in the cart. They're not taught to read the labels. They're just taught to save money. And it's still peanut butter, right? Peanut butter's peanut butter. No, it's not. That one's made with grain, which is probably Monsanto products, and it's been sprayed with Roundup, right? The cure is understanding that the brain, we're talking about autism here, a lot of it is autism spectrum disorder, neurodevelopment. Your brain is 90% fat. The lining of every myelinated nerve root is fat. And if that fat is sick fat, your brain's sick. Every nerve going from the brain to the tip of your toe that does either motor or sensation is lined with myelin. Only pain fibers aren't myelinated. And so when we look at these things, healthy fat and protein have to be talked about simultaneously. And that's the reason we have the Iron Roots pasture people here, because they represent our local access to the best bioavailable food that we can have, which is regeneratively farmed, organic. And then soon we'll be having the beef and the chicken, and we already have the chicken and eggs, and milk, of course, just for your animals. And so we have all these products that are available right here, but we need more people to know about it. And healthy fats are mono oils. Number one is olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil, coconut oil, and grapeseed oil are all good options. Olive oil, coconut oil are your lower temp things. They should never be cooked with over 350. They begin to become rancid. So then avocado oil and grapeseed oil are your high temperature cookers. And those can withstand up to 450. So that's your grilling. That's anything that you're going to put in a skillet that you're not monitoring the direct temperature. You have to be using avocado or grapeseed. Otherwise, they're aromatizing, which becomes cancer. Healthy fats from nuts and seeds. Organic, of course, is best. And then looking at our healthy fats and our proteins need to come simultaneously. And again, that's what we're talking about with chicken and eggs and dairy, and looking at our pasture-raised beef, our pasture-raised pork, and looking to have it. And you can go online and you can order from them, and it gets delivered here, and you can pick it up when you're coming in to get adjusted. Fruits and vegetables. If we're going to fix our nutrition, we need to let our kids know and ourselves know that 5 servings of fruit and 5 servings of vegetables is a minimum standard every day. And if you're eating that much, then you don't have that much room for all that other stuff. That ultra-processed food doesn't have a place in your diet. And then you're using your protein sources, of course, lentils and legumes, and all these things can be sources to save money. And then saving money enough to be able to afford the protein and the healthy fats that we get from buying organic. The fruits and vegetables, ewg.org has apps that you can download on your phone, and it's a great website. And ewg.org, you download those apps onto your phone, you open it up when you're in the grocery store, and let's say you're going to buy some deodorant. You can even scan your deodorant barcode, and it will tell you how toxic, how cancerous, and how allergic it is. And it gives it a rating right there in green, orange, yellow, red. And so you can know it. And that's another great app that you can put on your phone. Grains, yes. Ideally, grains do have some great content when they're organically sourced, pearled. You buy it, you mill the flour, you make your flour, then you make your dough, then you bake your bread. Sorry, I'm lazy that way. So I just avoid grains most of the time because we don't have that left in our lives right now with the 4 kids and the school and all the stuff. When I retire, I'll probably start doing that. But until then, I'll be sourcing and working with things like einkorn wheat, which is a low gluten content old ancient grain, and using grains like aramuth, kamut, buckwheat, and then using almond flour and coconut flour to cook my products that require grain, okay, or flour. Who has a question about a specific question, and it can even be about, or afterwards, I'll stick around for questions for personal things or whatever. But does anybody have a question about nutrition or supplementation as we move forward? Specific things? No? Great. Here's something we don't talk enough about. Health doesn't just start in the womb. Your blood is brand new every 120 days, right? We're on a constant regeneration schedule. Your liver's brand new every 2 years. The bone structure, our skeleton structure, it takes 7 years to recycle. So every 120 days, the content of whatever that is, the toxins that came from nutrition that we're trying to minimize by going organic, regeneratively farmed, utilizing the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, we're minimizing the toxins that are coming into our body from nutrition while maximizing the nutrient density that we have to minimize the deficiencies and minimize the toxins so that our body can then be neurodevelopmentally correct. Then we look at these things and say that the last 120 days of the mother in talking to kids, anyone who's sexually active, and talking to them in reference to the fact that the person that you are for the last 120 days is what the blood of the placenta will be made of, that the embryo will embed into. So one of the concepts I love to touch base on is nobody who's thinking about getting pregnant should be doing detoxes. If you're going through a detoxification process, you're pulling all the toxins out of you. And yes, it's going to make you healthier in the long run. But for that 120-day period while you were going through a detox, you're more toxic. Your body is getting rid of it. So we don't want to be going through detoxes right around the time we're thinking about getting pregnant. These are just concepts that kids need to start knowing and eating and talking about, and that we can address as parents and grandparents. So when we look at these things and start to look at the fact that spinal development and nervous system development, why is the chiropractor focused on this? Well, back to the definition, the philosophy, art, and science of things natural. With the concept that nervous system is the first thing to development, and it controls all other development. And that when we look at this, we have to look at the birth process. When we go from, okay, we're going to optimize our nutrition, we're going to be getting oxygen and exercise, and we're going to be having a positive mindset as a parent, then the birth process. How's that baby going to be born? Because has anybody here ever watched a video of a C-section? Anybody? Yeah, watched a video of birth, period? Yeah, sure. Yeah. I've been present for 4 up close and personal. And so, and unfortunately, the first one was a C-section. And I witnessed somebody getting cut open. And then the doctor, the baby's in a sac of muscle, right? And that muscle's contracting, trying to pump the baby through the birth canal. And the head is down. And it's hopefully face down, right? And so now the head's being pushed down into the birth canal. To get the baby out, they don't cut down the pubic bone. They cut into the belly of the uterus. So they cut up here. He takes his hand, reaches down, grabs my son's head, twists it about 120 degrees, bends it backwards, absolutely backwards by it was unbelievable. And then twists the shoulders back out. And my son's head is looking over backwards at me because I'm standing here. He's looking at me over here while his shoulders spin out. And then he brings him out and he says, and it was actually wild because he held him by one leg and he handed him to the nurse and he said, "Here, dry him off. I heard he's a chiropractor. I want to see him adjust him." And I was like, whoa, this has gone surreal. I'm like, wow, my son just looked like the exorcist, right? And the head's on backwards, and all this stuff. And then they have the audacity to wait. They hand me the baby, and the nurse says, "Hey, be careful with its head. Its neck's really gentle." What? You just see that's my son. He just twisted his head around backwards. There ain't nothing I'm going to do that's going to be anything. And I sat there, and they had to put him on the gurney thing they had there that was going to weigh him. Like, what is he supposed to weigh? But anyway, and so I'm like, all right, I check him, and I use my pinkies, and I'm checking the bones of his neck, and I go through. Got done. I'm like, everything's okay. And the guy goes, "That was it?" I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. I just put those bones back in by moving them back into place. You're the one who twisted his head around backwards." I'm like, "Yeah, of course I'm less dramatic than turning somebody's head 180 degrees, right? It's just not going to compare." So, folks, the reality is that we have to understand that with forceps deliveries, there's sometimes 90 pounds of pulling on the head and neck. The vacuum extraction's the same. And so when we look at these things, when we see children that are born and their head is all stuck to one side all the time, their head's always twisted the same way in the car seat, that's an obvious sign of birth trauma. The obvious sign also is latching. If the child will feed in a typical position one side, but when flipped to the other side, it doesn't want to feed, obvious birth trauma. Needs to be adjusted. And why isn't it that if those are the normal pressure and the normal grabbing the head, twisting the shoulders, called the corkscrew maneuver. The corkscrew maneuver is to get the shoulders out of the birth canal. That is a traumatic process for a brand new baby. And so why not check them at birth as soon as possible? Earliest I've ever done is 7 minutes. Can I speak? How long was it? It was a few hours. It was 4 hours before I got to you. And so I show up at home and I show up for free. If I show up at other places, we have to have a private discussion that's not on Facebook. And so we talk about these things because why? Every child deserves a good neurological first start. With it as fast as I can get there, I will go and we will do this because everybody deserves it. The neurological alignment, the spine is meant to surround and protect the connection of life. The brain is the generator of life. It is somehow, I don't know why that God created us this way, but the electrical life force that flows from the brain down the spinal cord out to every organ and tissue, this is what controls all of our chemistry. And our chemistry can't be controlled properly if we have subluxations, less than a dislocation of a vertebra stuck out of position, possibly from birth trauma. And that vertebra, especially in a newborn neck, doesn't have the musculature to pull that bone back into place. And so it's stuck, putting pressure where the breathing, respiration, swallowing, all of those things are controlled in cranial nerves, which are in the brainstem. And so the alignment of this connection is the most precious things to life. And so when we look at this, these are the things that we do to check people and make sure that they're as healthy as possible at birth. The nutrients from birth on, yes, we want to minimize the deficiencies and maximize minimize the toxins and minimize those deficiencies. So what we want to do is I wish I'd had the prenatal vitamins when my first two were born, but I wasn't a part of Max Living. I didn't carry supplements because I didn't know anyone who was third-party verifying and GMP certifying and doing all the things to make sure that it was just better than something I could buy at Whole Foods. And so I was buying Garden of Life prenatal vitamins for my first two kids. And then the last two, we've been using the Women's Daily Essentials prenatals. When it comes to supplements, they're regeneratively farmed, organic, they're bioavailable, certified at 95% more or 95% or better. And what's in it is verified. That's the reason I started carrying supplements, because I can buy whatever I want at cost as a doctor, and then I can sell it, and I can also give it to my family. So what I did was I finally found something that was worth, and I would give to my family that I could verify. And so for any person who's wanting to start on supplements, when you're at a workshop, one of the things that we do is we allow people to have a 15% discount on the bundles, this is one of them, which is the prenatal vitamins. When we talk about these things and we look at serving people, the knowledge that the research of minimizing toxins, one of those toxins is screen time. Research has shown that screen time prior to 18 months of age negatively affects reading, memory, sleep, attention, and language development. How many kids know that the digital babysitter is affecting their kids' language and reading skills? It's unfortunate that screen time, when you look at the brain scan of a kid who's gaming, it looks exactly like somebody who's just taken cocaine. The dopamine surge of gaming and the amount of stimulation and the colors and the way that it's all designed, it's a brain scan equal to cocaine. And that's why they're addicted. And I don't blame them, right? I mean, all of us are addicted enough just to sugar. And it doesn't look like cocaine on a brain scan. It's a little blip compared to that, right? But that's what they're getting from gaming. That's what we get when we get so involved in our screens. So no wonder and then think about on the spectrum kids who are already having serotonin and dopamine imbalances. We want to get back to the gut health, which we'll cover here in just a minute, talking about with autism spectrum and how essential it is. Well, as a matter of fact, let's just talk about it right now, because we're about to dive into serotonin and dopamine. Half of the dopamine that will be produced in the human body is produced in the intestinal tract. 70%, a minimum of 70% of all of the serotonin that will be produced in the human body is produced in the intestinal tract. So what goes along with autism spectrum? Typically very picky eating, right? They'll only eat one thing. I had somebody tell me the other day they were trying to get the girl they're dating to bring her to this workshop because her son will only eat nacho cheese Doritos, and on the weekend he will eat a pretzel that one particular family member has to bring him a pretzel from somewhere. And that's how on the spectrum this kid is. He lives off of nacho cheese Doritos. I mean, thank God that he's still alive. The human body is amazing in what it can do with minimal stuff. But the gut health is a direct relationship to the dopamine and the serotonin levels. And so when we look at gaming and the dopamine that is surged, we've already discussed that. The serotonin, the lack of motion, and the amount of activity that's typically seen in a child now. I have a child who goes to CCS, so it's even worse there than it is in Dade County, where they're so dependent upon their devices. He has a laptop, and he has a book, a tablet too, and it goes home with him at all times, and all homework, everything is done on this thing. So he's spending that much time on screens. Plus he does like to game, and we have to limit it because the lack of motion decreases spending time. If you're not using your joints outside in the UV light, producing vitamin D, the lack of activity leads to an underproduction of serotonin. So we're having massive surges of dopamine. We're having an underproduction of serotonin. And we're wondering why we're seeing skyrocketing levels of anxiety, depression, and neurodevelopmental disorders. Our society is producing them. And we're saying it's normal. When we look at these things, this is again, looking at their brains, it is affecting the chemistry, the wiring, and the overall functioning of their brain. And it affects the young brain, primarily affecting the brain in the frontal lobe. Why is that so important? Because the frontal lobe is all higher thinking. It's the logical overruling of compulsive behavior. If I'm standing up on the point where we used to jump off and hang glide, and I don't have my hang glider, I don't jump off. I still think it would be cool to run and jump off, right? But I don't have my hang glider, so I'm not going to jump. Compulsive behavior, that's me wanting to go. And I feel that temptation well up inside of me. And I'm like, whoa, dude, back away. Get away. It's kind of weird. Like you're overthinking. You're higher centers. We're rewiring their frontal lobes wrong. They're not going to develop. And that's why they're going to be more compulsive. The serotonin and the dopamine imbalances are happening. We then have to realize that during puberty, there's the same amount of chemical change, physical change, and brain development change that happens from age 0 to 2. And we all know a 2-year-old's way different than a brand newborn, right? I mean, you're like, woo! We might be even out of diapers by that time, right? I mean, like, wow. And then versus a newborn. That's how much. It didn't happen for us, but okay, I hope it happens for you. But like the idea is that this is the way that we're dealing with it. That's how much chemical and physical change is happening. And speaking of chemical and physical change, let's dive into puberty and sedentary lifestyle by having you stand up and let's move again. Come on, everybody's looking a little anesthetized. This time we won't use your feet. Let's get our blood pumping. We're going to do punching. You're going to pretend that the person that you despise the most or the thing that you despise the most is going to be right in front of you and you're going to sock it in the mouth for 20 seconds. It's going to be one of the most pleasurable things you get to do today because you don't go to jail for it. And 3, 2, 1, go. As hard as you can. We're punching and moving. And again, the idea is to get to 90%. Everybody looks silly. Just go ahead. And so when we do this, this is what we're going for. 90% output so that you're breathing and rest. Endorphins, caffeine, oxygen being delivered to your body. Have a seat. Less than 25% of kids today receive the 1 hour of physical activity that they're designed to have. Not even 1 hour. When we look at this, 52% of high schoolers don't attend a physical education class in a week. I mean, we're seeing record number of being sedentary, and then we're seeing record number of gaming. And what it's doing, again, I don't care about the beach body. I care about the fact that the cardiovascular system is designed to carry nutrition and oxygen to the cells. Every organ and tissue in the human body requires oxygen and nutrition. Then every cell produces cellular waste, which is toxic, and the cardiovascular system carries away that waste, and then the liver, the kidneys, your skin, all detox it, and this is how life happens. So if your heart and if our hearts and our bloodstreams are not properly fitted to provide oxygen and nutrition to every body part, I'll give you a hint. One of the causes of cancer is a lack of oxygen, creating an environment that forces cells to change. The lack of exercise is one of the reasons we're not seeing changes in cancer. When we are deficient and that system loses control, that body part's constantly creating fermentation for and to get ATP. It's just like when we exercise to the point that we get sore. Well, that organ's doing that on the inside, but the organs don't signal pain. They don't register, hey, I'm toxic from lack of oxygen. Please go out and exercise more. That's not what organs signal. They signal to the brain subconsciously. And if we don't continue to do this, we're just going to have more kids having adult problems. Period. And we already know that we've just seen a season of fear. We've just seen 4 years of complete and utter isolation and fear in which kids were raised in the level of stress that's equal to wartime. But the enemy was invisible. And we didn't know who it was going to kill. And it was imminent and it was everywhere. And the reality is that the online presence and the news and the media and the marketing, we are the average of the 5 people that we hang out with the most. Who are our kids socially meeting with? What impact is that having? If we're the average of the 5 people that we hang out with the most, and their online friends are Larry, Curly, and Mo, then they're going to be a stooge too. And that's just the reality of it. And they're spending all this time with them. And so we have to get back to what that fear was based on, which was talking about. I'm glad somebody remembers the Three Stooges. Sorry. Some of you are too young. That's okay. And so we have to get back to the immune system. Let's talk about artificial immunity versus natural immunity. All of our immune system is designed to keep things that we don't want in us out of us. We have barriers: skin, mucous membranes, upper respiratory tract, lower respiratory tract, all skin, labeled and lined with mucus, and it's meant to be a barrier to the outside, but it's meant to absorb oxygen, and it's meant to get rid of carbon dioxide, and it's meant to get rid of certain toxins. Our skin is a barrier, and we all know these things to be true, because when you get a cut, what are you worried about in the cut? An infection, right? Why are you worried about the cut more than the rest of your skin? Well, the barrier's been broken. And if that gets infected, it's easier for it to get into your bloodstream, then you become septic and die. That's the reality of why we really don't want it to get infected. Well, these barriers are lined with immune cells, white blood cells, phagocytes, and or macrophages, and they're meant to gobble up the virus or the bacteria that they come in contact with. Then they go back to the B cells, they go back to the lymph nodes, they present that gobbled up material, and then those B cells are all trying to find an antibody that'll fit to some part of it. And when one of them gets one right, it then starts multiplying. It creates a memory cell so that we have immunity for life, and then it creates all these other ones that are just meant to make more and more antibodies. They go out into the bloodstream. When the infection is gone, they quit making so much. And that's how our immune system works. That's natural immunity. Artificial immunity bypasses that. It's a shot, so it's a wound. The wound is healed totally different. My white blood cells still have to gobble. If I sprain my ankle, the white blood cells are what come along and clean up all the dead tissue. But they clean it up because it's an injury, not an infection. 2 totally different parts of the immune system. There's no danger sign. And so when we bypass the barrier in the natural presentation of viruses and bacteria to the white blood cells and then to the B cells, we create a different pathway. So they know this when they created the vaccines. And so the problem with vaccines that I have is that, number one, they're a bypass. It doesn't alert the immune system right. Number 2, the chemicals they put in there are called adjuvants. The adjuvants are thimersols, it's aluminum hydroxide, it's neomycin, it's formaldehyde. Some have polysorbate 80 or 20 or whatever in there. And all of these chemicals are meant to alert the danger response so that when the white blood cell just gets there to clean up the wound, it says, whoa, wait a second. Something's wrong. There's an infection in here. And it calls the right white blood cells in. Then they try to create the memory. And so it's a miss. The toxins that are there, like I said, thimerosal, it's mercury. It's aluminum hydroxide, all of which are poisons. Look them up. My wife didn't take my word for it. She looked up the ingredient of every shot on the list. It took her 6 months to go line by line to look at the different reactions that happened that could be possible. And in 6 months, I mean, he was 6 months. She was pregnant for 6 months when she finally said, okay, I agree with you. We'll vaccinate. I was like, really? What took you so long? I looked all of them up. I wasn't going to take your word for it. And I would salute you to do the same. Because the reality is, the other problem I have with vaccines today is that 2 things happen. Number 1, back in 1980s, when it became absolute that you had to have them, the average was around 16 doses by the time you were age 18. Now we're at 70 doses by age 18, and over half of them are before 15 months old. So we're near 30 vaccination doses by the time a child is 2. And that is a lot of adjuvants. That is a lot of toxins. And each child has their ability to detoxify those. And once that threshold is passed, we have neurological damage, neurodevelopmental disorders. If a woman ingests lead paint, we know while she's pregnant, at some point she'll reach a threshold and the child's neurodevelopment is contaminated. If she drinks enough alcohol, contamination. If she takes enough drugs, anti-epileptics, antidepressants, neurodevelopmental disorders. When a woman unknowingly, or a child, we as parents don't know what their detoxification possibilities are. And at that level of triple the amount of 1984, why triple? Because in 1984, an act was passed by Ronald Reagan that gave pharmaceutical companies zero liability for the injury. The pharmaceutical companies were at $750 million in profit, gross, all of them together in 1984. They were going to go bankrupt from the amount of litigation that was happening, and they were paying out so much money that they went to the government and they said, if you want us to produce your vaccines, hey, we did help with polio. Remember, we helped with smallpox. Then you have to give us immunity. And Ronald Reagan said yes. And he passed a law creating a separate court system to which you as a parent should know they've paid out over $7 billion in damages to families since 1984. So there is a risk. And we all know the risk now. In the last 4 years, we've seen a bigger window of it pop up on our screen. But when we look at this vaccine liability, it allowed, because think of it, are there triple the number of things, right? It's still chickenpox, it's still pneumonia, it's still Hep B, A, and C. We have pertussis, measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, tetanus. Those are the things. So why has it gone up to triple? There's not triple the number of threats. Well, it's because if you had something, a product, and the government told you, you can make as much money off of it, you have no liability. Would you try to get more things that are pharmaceuticals, maybe your other products converted over into a vaccine that you know you're going to get paid for by the person, their insurance, or the government 100%, 100% of the time? Does that sound like a good business model? And you never can lose any money. You're always going to get paid. Isn't that every business's dream? Right? Sometimes we think about it. Oh, dude, if I could come up with that perfect t-shirt, I'd create that t-shirt company, sell it, right? But those are our thoughts. This is their business model. And their business model is gone from $750 million a year to $70 billion with a B a year. That's how much money they're making. You have to decide. My job is to give you the information and to teach logical thought. I've made my decision. The only thing that I ask of participants is that you value you, your nation, and myself enough to at least allow others to be considered normal citizens and to not be segregated, because we know that if you had an infection, would you allow somebody to put leeches on you? Do you know that George Washington in his day, that was the height of science, and that's how he died? We laugh at that. He did. He laughed at it. We laugh at that now. Yeah. 50 years from now, they're going to laugh at our science. We know this is the only continual thing. So to mandate something that we know is going to be laughed at 50 years from now, and not give free people the freedom of choice and to be a free citizen and to keep their job. And this is where Miss Anna's going to read something. I had somebody who was going to speak, and this same employer that was going to fire her because of her choices, she has to work overtime there tonight. Go ahead. So Miss Anna's going to read about Miss Tanya for a second.
As I write this, I pray that my story brings hope to anyone going through something similar. In 2021, my world was turned upside down. I had just had a baby in May of 2021. I was going through postpartum, but also struggling with the unknown COVID. I work in healthcare, and unfortunately, I was also being faced with a big decision: take the COVID vaccine or lose my job. It was frightening to turn on the TV and see and hear what they were saying about COVID. And here I had a newborn that I didn't want to risk catching anything. I worked I feared anything and everything. I even made my husband quit his job in fear that he would bring something home. All this fear and being faced with losing my job, I went and had the first dose of the vaccine. I had so many days to get the second dose, or I would still lose my job, even though I worked from home. Immediately after the first dose, I knew I had made a huge mistake. I started having skin reactions. Anytime I would take a shower, I'd break out in a rash. Pushing my baby stroller, my fingers would turn blood red. This was only the beginning of weird things happening to my body. I went to my primary care physician at the time, who dismissed my concern and pushed forward and still encouraged me to get that second dose of the vaccine. I knew in my heart that I couldn't get the second dose, or I probably would be alive. After many visits to primary care, all weird symptoms I was getting, I was alerted to dermatology area, which is something I still believe to this day. As time went on, I had other issues. I would have so much inflammation in my body that my feet would hurt just walking. I had chest pain. My scalp would be so tender that it hurt. There were countless doctor visits. I went to any and every doctor I could get into, searching for these diseases. I went to multiple primary care, urologists, function doctors, heart doctors, gastroenterologists, homeopathic doctors, even urologists, and countless different doctors. Every doctor I went to dismissed my symptoms when I went to it all started happening really fast. I had family that thought I was a hypochondriac and still think that to this day. But I was always a healthy person. I never went to the doctor prior to 2021, but I knew my body and I knew something was wrong. Every test the doctor would run would come back normal, but there was nothing normal about how my body felt. When I started researching on my own, I would spend hours and hours diving down the internet trails. During all this, I had submitted a religious to my work to help me be able to see myself. And my religious profession was not. I was one point, my decision that there was nothing to do. I was not doing that second dose. The day before my termination, the court called me. The court decided that I considered that I was the only one working with me under my husband's job. A few months later, a friend had mentioned that she'd been in a doctor that helped her with some other issues, same functional neurology. And that was Dr. Samuel, and he actually listened to me and went through several issues with my pain. Up until then, I hadn't had a doctor actually listen. I felt hope. I visited Dr. Stable 3 times a week, and he helped me correct my chest pain and 2 other issues. I felt I had some form of dystonia. After a few months, I backed off seeing him because the commute was so far. It was an hour and a half commute each way. I ended up finding a new primary care physician who listened to me and didn't think I was crazy with all these symptoms. I would still have issues come up randomly, and I would have ER visits and primary care visits. My primary care kept telling me that I needed to find a new chiropractor, and this is when I found Dr. Samuel. I was hesitant to tell him my story, but as soon as I called him, my phone and I felt peace. My first visit, Dr. Chad listened to my entire story, my entire thing, everything I had been through, and all the doctors I had visited, etc. He felt very confident that he could help me, and he could do Dr. Chad. I started to see Dr. Chad 3 times a week. At the time, I had a lot of vision there, a lot. I felt like I was always going to have that. After some x-rays, Dr. Chad felt it was related to my business nerve and killing. I was down to the ER multiple times, neurologists, had EEGs and MRIs, brain, and never was I told about the radio nerve. After several weeks of seeing Dr. Chad, I started to feel better. The dizziness was better. I was feeling good again. Life was starting to feel normal, so I was in modeling. A person hit me from behind the freeway and totaled my car. It set me back worse than it was supposed to be Dr. Chad, and I felt like I could rock on again. But Dr. Chad told me that my body had started to feel fine to do it again. I was hoping that I could do work with that. I continued to see this pretty quickly, and it took about 11 weeks when I finally got back to where I was prior to it. I can't tell you how relieved I was. I currently see Dr. Chad 3 times a week and feel 90% back to where I was prior to that. I have energy because I didn't have after the vaccine. I can actually play with my son out in the yard and not feel like I'm getting for life starting to feel normal again. I want you to know to not give up. You know your body better. I feel like our health care doesn't get the recognition it should. It's one of the biggest repercussions when it comes to our health. Over the past few years, there have been lots of players who are willing to work with the primary care physicians and the chiropractic care of this journey. It's got me on
Thank you. And that is based on the 5 essentials. It is about finding out what's causing the problem. For her, her body was so neurologically challenged that her vagus nerve and she had problems that were going on that she didn't know about, just like other things, like cancer, heart disease. They don't start one day. They develop slowly over time, right? And then finally, she was challenged with a toxin that overwhelmed her nervous system, which resulted in vagus nerve dysfunction. I was able to identify it and then help correct the cause. And we have since seen her, well, you heard it, 90% back. And again, the best compliment that I get and the thing that I get to see is she leaves here excited to get to go home and play with her kids. That's the juice. That's the stuff that I work and live for. Because the reality is that you have to educate yourself on health and what it means to be healthy. And it's not based on how you feel. It's not based on how you look. It is based on how you function. Your body's ability to heal determines how healthy you will be. And when we look at you within a real healthcare system, chiropractic says, how's your nervous system? How healthy is the spine and the vertebra that surround and protect every nerve that's going to every organ and tissue in your body? If it's subluxated, nothing can work right. Your chemistry cannot be at 100%. And that's why we help people get checked. How's your nutrition? What's your mindset on health? How much oxygen and exercise are you getting? The reason that I had us go to 90% output and back down is because at 90% output, your body thinks you just got in a fight and it burns off the long-acting cortisol hormone, the stress hormone that continually trickles up as we age if we never burn it off to that fight or flight perspective. So when we reciprocally, we don't just go on a walk and have a good time. We get out of breath. And when we exercise like this, we're resetting the stress hormones. Not only are we getting physically active and improving our physical fitness, we're doing it in a way that works with our hormonal system. We minimize people's toxins, like household products. Folks, the cleaning supplies, one of the things I really recommend that you do is go online, ewg.org, scan your products, look for cleaning products, because again, all disease, toxicity, deficiency, or a loss of control. So when we clean up our home, that's one of the reasons, we have Miss Nita here. She has all this stuff from doTERRA that's here that we use both in all of our products. And these are the things that we use in our home to put into our cleaning supplies. It's the things that we put on top of the felt wool balls that we throw into the dryer because we won't use dryer sheets because of how toxic they are with chemicals, right? If there's enough chemicals in there to relax fabric, what's it going to do to you? I mean, let's just be honest and think about it. The fact is these are safe and non-toxic. My kids know that lavender is relaxing, and they know all these properties because of the conversations that my wife has with them. I would love to take credit, but I don't. And because she's the 90% and I'm the 10%. Let's be honest. And so these are the things that we use. So they are here to provide food and to provide supplies that we can use to minimize the toxicity that's coming into our body. Realizing that the BPA, let's give you just a little example. Everybody knows about BPA, right? They removed it from kids' toys because we knew that it was part of the cancer, and that brain cancer is the fastest growing part of cancer diagnosis, and the fastest growing population of people on the planet Earth who are having brain cancer is children. And so knowing that, they said, hey, maybe we should remove this BPA. But did they tell you that all they did was replace it with BPS and BPF, which are in the exact same chemical formula compound? They're plasticizers. For that plastic to stay in its shape, it has to have certain chemicals that allow it to maintain that shape. And all we're just doing is a few years from now, we're going to learn how BPF is causing cancer and how BPS is causing cancer. It's inevitable. It says thereby these chemicals both affect body weight and tumorigenesis, also affect metabolism, cancer progression by interacting with the GPR30 gene, and may impair male reproductive function by binding to androgen receptors. The more plastic in your life, the more our boys are turning into girls. This is just a chemical outcome. It's a side effect of convenience of plastic. Cast iron, glass for storing, Pyrex, and then cooking with cast iron or stainless steel, water bottles or stainless steel or Pyrex. Everything, getting rid of as much plastic in your life as you can. Spinal development, folks, it's not just about the falls and the bumps and the bruises. We want to see kids. We give all of our new patients 6 weeks to get their family checked for free. Why? Because we want to check the kids. Why? Because the fact is that these are the warning signs. Colicky babies and bedwetting and asthma and ear infections. These are the check engine lights that scream neurological problems. Autism, ADD, ADHD. How many of these kids are running around and their nervous system got fried by whatever toxin it was, whether it was a vaccine or whether it was the chemicals the mother didn't know not to use while cleaning her house, or maybe she had been depressed for so long and then she didn't know that her drug that she was taking was also going to be toxic to the baby, and she just was taking her normal antidepressant. These parents deserve to know these things, but it causes nervous system disorders. What if all we needed to do was take some x-rays, get them adjusted, and let their nervous system have less pressure on it, and it started to function better? What if all of this only fixes half of cancer, half of heart disease, half of autism, half of the problem? With a problem that's growing out of control, wouldn't you take 50% less disease in America? 50% less pharmaceutical costs, 50% less chance of passing on cancer to your family. That's what this new healthcare system is doing. So we want our kids, I want that. This is my little girl, Ellie. Like, this is what I want to see her doing all the time. That's what I want to see. Because we want superstars. So what we want is, these are the supplements that I feed my kids. It's the Nordic Naturals vitamin D3 gummies, because the ones that Max Living produced, they were really awful. They're good quality, but they tasted terrible. My kids would, it was not worth the battle. So I found some that were equally non-toxic and equally good. Max Greens, this is part of the bundle that's 15% off. All the supplements in the office are 10% off at Workshops, but the bundles are 15% off. The Max Greens for kids, it is superfoods. It's all the powdered green supplements, but they're organic, they're regeneratively farmed, they're not toxic. It's all right there. And the reason we do that is because even though my wife's a vegetarian, I eat probably 70% of my diet is vegetables and plants. I do eat grass-fed beef, and I buy a cow every year and all the stuff. Have deer and these things, but yet we still struggle to get our kids to eat 5 servings of fruit and 5 servings of vegetables a day. Let's just be honest. So what we do is, my wife for breakfast most days of the week, especially during the school year, she makes a smoothie, and she takes the grass-fed whey protein, and then if there's all 6 of us are going to have a smoothie for breakfast, she'll put the protein in, because 2 of us, to my kids, have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it's done by weight. You just take maybe a fourth of the scoop of the Max Greens, and that's what I would give my Ellie, who's only 4. Maybe half a scoop, or not even quite half, for the 7-year-old, and the 14 and the 6-year-old, the 16-year-old, they're 140 pounds, so they get a normal scoop. And so you just dose it equally based on weight. And so for the younger kids, our Max Greens will last several months. But that's how we get past that. We make sure that we're minimizing the deficiencies and not giving them anything toxic by giving them the greens. And then they are also on the Max Kids multivitamin. And that's every day. Because even when we're trying, if everything's not regeneratively farmed, if I'm not getting all of my supplies from somebody like Iron Roots Pastures, with the amount of soil depletion and the amount of lack of nutrient density that's out there, even with doing all of that, it's hard to get it. The daily essentials for men and the daily essentials for women, what is that? It's the omega oil supplement, the multi B vitamin, the magnesium, the vitamin D, and a multivitamin and mineral, all put in a single serving package because those are the 5 most common deficiencies in the United States. So what you do is you take that packet, goes in your pocket. If you're fasting like I do 3 days a week, in the morning, I won't eat until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm doing intermittent fasting because that's my digestive system likes that and my metabolism likes it. So I'll take my supplements and I bring them to work. When I eat, I take my supplements because you have to have fat to absorb vitamin D, A, E, or K. If you don't have fat in that meal, you just peed or pooped away those supplements that you took. You also never take supplements with a fiber supplement. Fiber is meant to bind up toxins and sweep your colon. It's going to bind up your supplements and sweep them right out the wrong end, right? These are the kind of conversations that we have with our patients on a daily basis. I'm serious. New patients in my office, I get the face. They're like, I don't know about this guy. When I say, I don't want to talk about your dog. I don't care about the weather. That's not what you're here for. You're here to get information to go out and live a better life because God has a plan for you. I don't know what that is, but He does. And you are meant to go off and do those things. And I want you to be at your best because your family deserves it. Your community deserves it. Your church deserves it. What's the number one thing somebody can do that's never been checked by a chiropractic office like this? The number one thing is to get checked. Find out if you have subluxation, neurological interference, not allowing your body to function properly. That's the first step. That's why at workshops, we allow people to sign up. It's a 60% discount. It's $60 for the new patient visit, which includes the exam. If the exam tells me you need x-rays, I'll take as many x-rays as you need. And then that covers the consultation where we go over all of your paperwork. And then that visit is over. And no matter how many x-rays I take, it's still just $60. And then the next time a person comes back in for their second visit, we sit down and we go over those x-rays. We tell you exactly what we found that was wrong with them. And if that person chooses to get adjusted, well, then there's a cost for the adjustment, but there's no cost for that consultation to go over those x-rays. And that's what we try to do to help people understand that the people who need to be here the most, let's be honest, they're probably not here, right? The people who could really stand to lose 100 pounds, the people who could really stand to understand that oxygen is a necessity and exercise is a necessity, it's not an option. The fact that the 4th leading detoxifier in the human body is your skin. If you don't sweat profusely every day, you're toxic because the 4th leading detoxifier isn't being used. You have to sweat to get that skin to give off the things that it needs to. So it's a detoxifier. These are the things that we talk about and that we want people to understand and get from their doctor. Not diagnoses and pharmaceuticals, because we are at a point in society because we have lied to people and said you can pharmaceutical your way out of a problem that you've lifestyled your way into. Lifestyle is the cause of 90% of all chronic disease in America. If we don't fix it and we don't make it common knowledge and obtainable for people, if I can't help get you compassionate and have you go out and motivate your church, your family to start to deal with the reality that we're causing our own problems, then we won't see change. And as Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I'm not insane. I'm not as smart as him either, but I'm not insane. And the reality is that we want to limit screen time. The first thing you could do on your own for free is remove processed food from your diet and your kids' diet. Well, that's one of the things I want to say about exercise. Oh, I'm tired from work, and you should go out and play. Doesn't work. We have to be well enough to get out and go out and play with them. And that's one of the things I do for adults. That's why I love the ending of her story, of Tanya's story, is that she gets to go back out and play with her kids. My job is to keep adults healthy enough to have the quality and quantity of life to be role models for their kids and their grandkids. Schedule the play, prioritize it, realize that tonight is one step into Kids Day. We have free spinal screening, vision screenings, dental screenings, scoliosis screenings at the high school from 10 to 2 this coming Saturday. Then on Sunday, I'm going to be out at the Macedonia Primitive Baptist Church in Eider. We're giving out free school supplies to kids. We're going to be out there doing spinal screenings and having jump houses and food and just fun and just trying to get out into the community to do something good. Yes? In backpack safety, of course. Yes, the backpack safety. We're going to be, one of the things we know is that backpacks and the overuse of them and the kids walking around like turtles while their backpack hangs over their butt, because you know what? We're not allowing them enough time in between classes to actually go to their locker. I mean, this is a problem. My son, his backpack, I fight with him every day because it's like 50 pounds and he only weighs 120. And so when we look at these things, we're going to be doing that. The Alliance for Dade Luncheon. I'm going to be talking about reversing diabetes and heart disease. We're going to be doing the what it takes to reverse diabetes and heart disease talk there next Thursday, which is my birthday, in which I do turn 50, and I'm really excited about that and kind of a little bit wigged out, if I'm being honest. But the reason I do this and I live this way is because I have a 4-year-old. And if I'm going to see her get married and I'm going to see her have kids, then I have to live this way to have the results, to not be a statistic. And the same reason I want that for you. We're going to do a raffle right now. We're going to go through the things, those little tickets we're going to go through and give away some of the things that that was about. All right, here we go.
She's my secretary.
Oh, she's your secretary. She's going to write down who got what. Oh, thank you, voluntold. I love it. So what am I giving away, by the way?
Vitamin D gummies.
Vitamin D. Wait, but that's vitamin D3. That is.
Okay, well, make sure that it's vitamin D gummies.
Yeah, please God, because we're going to be giving this to a kid. It's melatonin. Got home, gave my kid some vitamin D3. He passed out for a week. What? No, that's not what we want, because we know we're giving it to a parent, because that's Janet Mathis. Yes, you won. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe afterwards, Janet, I'll get you the vitamin D.
What am I giving out now? That could have been bad. Vitamin D3. For adults. Yeah. Josh Bradley?
Josh Bradley.
Awesome. All right. What else were you giving away?
We have, doTERRA has given us a child's, this is a roller bottle for children. It's the Focus Blend.
Tell us a little bit about it, Nita.
Well, the children's products that I have on display here are already mixed with fractionated coconut oil. They're totally safe for kids to use. They can rub it on the bottom of their feet, which is where the largest pores are.
So this one's Focus. This one's going to help be the blend that would help kids focus. And so...
That is Dr. Graham.
Dr. Graham. Okay. We don't have any kids. All right. So yeah, but you won. Congratulations. Oh, all right. Mr. McDavid. Yeah. Okay. Again, all the people without kids. So let's see here. So let's pull somebody who has kids.
I applaud you guys for coming to see.
Ooh, Kalani Nagel. Yeah, there you go. You have kids. There we go. We just had to go down there long enough. All right. Last. Nope. We have Spry Gum, safe gum chewing, non-toxic. Joseph Persinger.
All right.
Yeah. There you go. Sure.
Last but not least, helping with the posture when you're holding your.
Yes, absolutely. So the average, if your neck is at 60 degrees down while looking at a tablet or a phone or anything, you're adding 60 pounds of pressure to the spine and the spinal cord. So that is a ridiculous amount. Think about taking 6 bowling balls and standing 10-pound bowling balls and put them on your head. It's a lot of pressure. So this is a pop socket that goes on the back of the phone. It is a Max Living Pucks socket.
And that is Miss Kelly.
Nice. There you go. Sweet. There you go. All right. She was looking for you. All right. And so the vitamin D will not be melatonin. We will replace that, promise. All right. All right. Although sometimes we do want to give them melatonin. All right. So thank you very much. I hope that you are both empowered to change your own life and help us change the community. As you get ready to leave, if you want to buy any supplements, just stop up front. Tell Miss Anna your order forms are in your packets and also your sign-up sheets. For any person that you want us to check, they have to call within this week. They have to call and sign up for their new patient appointments this week to get that deal that came from you putting their name on the list of that flyer that's in there in your packet. And then there's lots of national vaccine safety information for those of you to do your own research. Thanks for coming, and God bless. Have a great night.